And next up, we have An Outcast in Another World, a fantasy LitRPG adventure, book number 1, Human Insanity, written by Kamikaze Potato. It is 696 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. Rob didn't think of himself as anyone special. When a pitch-black portal tried to warp his best friend in chains, he stepped up without thinking and found himself ensnared instead. His moment of heroism resulted in him being torn away from everyone he knew and loved, kidnapped by an unknown force that leaves him with a note in his pocket saying, "Good luck." And after being thrown into the wilderness of Elatra, a hostile fantasy world whereby levels, stats, progression, and bizarre video game logic, he finds himself entirely out of his depth. Armed with nothing but a sword and the clothes on his back, he sets out on his first day and almost dies. On the second, he almost dies again, and on the third, he begins to notice a worrying trend and almost dies. It doesn't get any easier from there. Overcoming the wilds is just the first step in his journey. The society of Elatra is incredibly hostile to humans. Having just come from a devastating war, the leftover half the population dead, and getting the locals to kindle their faith and trust the last human in existence is a struggle in and of itself. Between being powerless in a world that hates him and suffering under a system that is altering his mind in unwanted ways, Rob quickly finds that monsters aren't nearly the biggest thing to worry about. As far as LitRPG Isekai adventures go, Rob did the short straw in many ways, but that's okay. All that in the world won't keep him down. He'll carve out a place for himself with his bare hands if necessary. He'll survive and then he'll thrive, whether or not anyone wants him to or not. So there we go. This is a fairly good transported fantasy LitRPG world story. The main character has a certain sense of humor that will kind of determine how much you like this to a degree. For a lot of readers, it really landed. It has well over 1,500 reviews, I believe, on Amazon at this point. This is the first book in the series. The second book recently came out, so I figured I'd give it a shot. And a lot of people like it. I still enjoyed it, but I don't think that the humor landed with me as well as it did other people. I could tell that the main character is making jokes and had a quirky sense of humor. But I just kind of recognized it didn't make me laugh out loud, unfortunately. And other people, I'm sure it will. There's also an audiobook for the story, so that might add flavor to the story. Most of all, is mostly just an adventure story focused on some good world building that puts humans on the evil side of things with an innate characteristic that makes quick leveling addictive. To the point that's all they want to do is kill, and that initiated a war with the other races to fill that need. And honestly, it kind of felt like a stretch in that it would have led to the self-destruction of the piece, the humans just murdering each other to gain levels before they look to outside sources. But, I get it. It's a unique twist on the human level grind concept. So I appreciate it in that respect. On the game mechanics side of things, lots of notifications, lots of power levels up, lots of new abilities, all the time as the main character survives in the rough fantasy RPG world. He eventually connects with another race, and he has to kind of earn and win their trust. And that entire kind of arc of that storyline, it had for me sometimes some pacing issues, and the story slowed down to to a good degree sometimes, but eventually it picks back up, and you get some more action adventure and the good leveling stuff that I generally like in this kind of fantasy Isekai RPG story. There are, again, plenty of RPG abilities and stuff, nothing too new and outstanding. There are some nice little cute combinations, but there are also some abilities that popped up where you're like, that's an interesting ability, and then a couple pictures oh, that's why this exists. The author is giving it to him so we can survive the situation. Okay. And that happens occasionally in the story, but for the most part, fairly decent, kind of abilities and powers that pop up, that give them unique quirks and advantages. Overall, good story. This is, again, a serial story that is collected to a degree and then published. So you're not necessarily going to get a traditional 3-act structure. Sometimes it just stretches out a little bit, or it lulls in the middle and originally it was, published a chapter or two at a time. So just expect that as well. I liked the character interactions. Once the main character reached the elves, there was some decent social development there. And again, throughout the entire story, regular action adventure with some lulls occasionally. But still, fine read, gets a score of 7.3 out of 10 for me. An Outcast in Another World, a fantasy LitRPG adventure, book number 1, Human Insanity, with the score 7.3 out of 10.